Hello, and welcome once again to a Willits Community Theater production here on KLLG-LP 97.9. This evening, you are stepping back in time to take a journey to Illinois to visit with guests of an establishment locally known as The Hill. But a word to the wise. These folks, much like the place they call home, are not quite what they seem. Everyone has a story, and these people have been dying to tell you theirs. Tales of triumph and failure, joy and sorrow, good and evil, life and death. Secrets, sins, scandals. Life in a small town is never dull. Welcome to Spoon River.
Where are Elmer, Herman, Bert, Tom, and Charlie?
The weak of will, the strong of arm, the clown, the boozer, the fighter.
All are sleeping on the hill.
One passed in a fever, one was burned in a mine.
One was killed in a brawl, one died in a jail.
One fell from a bridge, toiling for children and wife.
All are sleeping on the hill.
Where are Ella, Kate, Mag, Lizzie, and Edith?
The tender heart, the simple soul, the loud, the proud, the happy one?
All are sleeping on the hill.
One died in shameful childbirth.
One of a thwarted love.
One at the hands of a brute in a brothel.
One of a broken pride in the search for heart's desire.
One, after life in faraway London and Paris, was brought to her little space by Ella and Kate and Mag.
All are sleeping on the hill.
Where are Uncle Isaac and Aunt Emily?
And old Townie Kincaid and Savine Houghton.
And Major Walker, who had talked with venerable men of the Revolution?
All are sleeping on the hill.
They brought them dead sons from the war.
And daughters whom life had crushed.
And their children, fatherless, crying.
All are sleeping on the hill.
Where is old Fiddler Jones, who played with life all his 90 years?
Braving the sleet with bared breast.
Drinking, riding, thinking neither of wife nor kin?
Nor gold, nor love, nor heaven.
Lo, he babbles of the fish fries of long ago.
Of the horse races of long ago at Clary's Grove.
And of what Abe Lincoln said one time at Springfield.
Ollie McGee. Have you seen walking through the village a man with downcast eyes and haggard face? That is my husband, who by secret cruelty, never to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty, till at last, wrinkled and with yellow teeth, and with broken pride and shameful humility, I sank into the grave. But what think you gnaws at my husband's heart? The face of what I was, the face of what he made me. These are driving him to the place where I lie. In death, therefore, I am avenged.
Fletcher McGee. She took my strength by minutes. She took my life by hours. She drained me like a fevered moon that saps the spinning world. The days went by like shadows. The minutes wheeled like stars. She took the pity from my heart and made it into smiles. She was a hunk of sculptor's clay. My secret thoughts were fingers. They flew behind her pensive brow and lined it deep with pain. They set the lips and sagged the cheeks and drooped the eyes with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It was not mine, It was not hers. She held it, but its struggles molded a face she hated, and a face I feared to see. I beat the windows, shook the bolts. I hid me in a corner, and then she died and haunted me and hunted me for life.
Flossie Cabanis. From Bindle's Opera House in the village to Broadway is a great step, but I tried to take it. My ambition fired when 16 years of age, seeing East Lynne played here in the village by Ralph Barrett, the coming romantic actor who enthralled my soul. True, I trailed back home a broken failure when Ralph disappeared in New York, leaving me alone in the city. But life broke him also. In all this place of silence there are no kindred spirits. How I wish Jews could stand amid the pathos of these quiet fields and read these words.
Doc Hill. I went up and down the streets, here and there, by day and night, through all hours of the night, caring for the poor who were sick. Do you know why? My wife hated me. My son went to the dogs. And I turned to the people and poured out my love to them. Sweet it was to see the crowds about the lawns on the day of my funeral, and hear them murmur their love and sorrow. But oh, dear God, my soul trembled, scarcely able to hold to the railing of the new life, when I saw M. Stanton behind the oak tree at the grave, hiding herself and her grief.
Minerva Jones. I am Minerva, the village poetess, hooted at, jeered at by the yahoos of the street, for my heavy body, cockeye, and rolling walk, and all the more when Butch Weldy captured me after a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Myers, and I sank into death, growing numb from the feet up, like one stepping deeper and deeper into a stream of ice. Will someone go to the village newspaper and gather into a book the verses I wrote? I thirsted so for love. I hungered so for life.
Indignation Jones. You would not believe, would you, that I came from good Welsh stock? That I was purer-blooded than the white trash here, and of more direct lineage than the New Englanders and Virginians of Spoon River? You would not believe that I've been to school and read some books. You saw me only as a run-down man with matted hair and beard and ragged clothes. Sometimes a man's life turns into a cancer, from being bruised and continually bruised, and swells into a purplish mass like growths on stalks of corn. Here was I, a carpenter, mired in a bog of life into which I walked, thinking it was a meadow, with a slattern for a wife, and poor Minerva, my daughter, whom you tormented and drove to death. So I crept like a snail through the days of my life. No more you hear my footsteps in the morning, resounding on the hollow sidewalk, going to the grocery store for a little cornmeal and a nickel's worth of bacon.
Dr. Myers. No other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for people in this town than I. And all the weak, the halt, the improvident, and those who could not pay flocked to me. I was good-hearted, easy Dr. Myers. I was healthy, happy, in comfortable fortune, blessed with a congenial mate, my children raised, all wedded, doing well in the world. And then one night, Minerva, the poetess, came to me in her trouble, crying. I tried to help her out. She died. They indicted me. The newspapers disgraced me. My wife perished of a broken heart. and pneumonia finished me.
Mrs. Myers. He protested all his life long. The newspapers lied about him villainously, that he was not at fault for Minerva's fall, but only tried to help her. Poor soul, so sunk in sin, he could not see that even trying to help her, as he called it, he had broken the law, human and divine. Passers-by, an ancient admonition to you. If your ways would be ways of pleasantness, and all your pathways peace, love God and keep his commandments.
Cassius Hufer. They have chiseled on my stone the words, his life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. Those who knew me smile as they read this empty rhetoric. My epitaph should have been, life was not gentle to him, and the elements so mixed in him that he made warfare on life, in which he was slain. While I lived, I could not cope with slanderous tongues. Now that I am dead, I must submit to an epitaph graven by a fool.
Benjamin Pantier. Together in this grave lie Benjamin Pantier, attorney at law, and Nige, his dog, constant companion, solace, and friend. Down the gray road, friends, children, men, and women, passing one by one out of life, left me till I was alone, with Nige for partner, bedfellow, comrade in drink. In the morning of life, I knew aspiration and saw glory. The she who survives me snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death, till I, once strong of will, lay broken, indifferent, living with Nige in a back room in a dingy office. Under my jawbone is snuggled the bony nose of Nige. Our story is lost in silence. Go by, mad world.
Mrs. Benjamin Pantier. I know that he told that I snared his soul with the snare that bled him to death, and all the men loved him, and most of the women pitied him. But suppose you are really a lady and have delicate tastes, and loathe the smell of whiskey and onions, and the rhythm of Wordsworth's ode runs in your ears, while he goes about from morning till night, repeating bits of that common thing. Oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? And then suppose you are a woman well endowed, and the only man with whom the law and morality permit you to have marital relations is the very man that fills you with disgust. Every time you think of it, while you think of it, every time you see him. That's why I drove him away from home, to live with his dog in a dingy room back of his office.
Reuben Pantier. Well, Emily Sparks, your prayers were not wasted. Your love was not all in vain. I owe whatever I was in life to your hope that would not give me up, to your love that saw me still as good. Dear Emily Sparks, let me tell you the story. I passed the effect of my father and mother. The milliner's daughter made me trouble, and out I went into the world, where I passed through every peril known of wine and women and joy of life. One night, in a room in the Rue de Rivoli, I was drinking wine with a black-eyed cocotte, and tears swam into my eyes. She thought they were amorous tears, and smiled for thought of her conquest over me. But my soul was 3,000 miles away, in the days when you taught me in Spoon River. And just because you no more could love me, nor pray for me, nor write me letters, the eternal silence of you spoke instead. And the black-eyed cocotte took the tears for hers, as well as the deceiving kisses I gave her. Somehow, from that hour, I had a new vision. Dear Emily Sparks.
Emily Sparks. Where is my boy? My boy, in what far part of the world? The boy I loved best of all in the school. I, the teacher, the old maid, the virgin heart, who made them all my children. Did I know my boy aright, thinking of him as a spirit aflame, active, ever aspiring? Oh, boy, boy, for whom I prayed and prayed in many a watchful hour at night. Do you remember the letter I wrote you of the beautiful love of Christ? And whether you ever took it or not, my boy, wherever you are, work for your soul's sake, that all the clay of you, all the dross of you, may yield to the fire of you, till the fire is nothing but light, nothing but light.
Alfonso Churchill. They laughed at me as Professor Moon, as a boy in Spoon River, born with the thirst of knowing about the stars. They jeered when I spoke of the lunar mountains and the thrilling heat and cold and the Ebon valleys by silver peaks and Spica quadrillions of miles away, and the littleness of man. But now that my grave is honored, friends, let it not be because I taught the lore of the stars in Knox College, but rather for this, that through the stars I preached the greatness of man, who is none the less a part of the scheme of things for the distance of Spica or the spiral nebulae, nor any the less a part of the question of what the drama means.
Daisy Fraser. Did you ever hear of Editor Whedon giving to the public treasury any of the money he received for supporting candidates in office? Or for writing up the canning factory to get people to invest? Or for suppressing facts about the bank when it was rotten and ready to break? Did you ever hear of the circuit judge helping anyone except the Q Railroad or the bankers? Or did Reverend Pete or Reverend Sibley give any part of their salary, earned by keeping still or speaking out as the leaders wished them to do, to the building of the waterworks? But I, Daisy Fraser, who always passed along the street through rows of nods and smiles and coughs and words such as, "There she goes," never was taken before Justice Arnett without contributing $10 and costs to the school fund of Spoon River.
Fiddler Jones. The earth keeps some vibration going there in your heart, and that is you. And if the people find you can fiddle, why, fiddle you must for all your life. What do you see? A harvest of clover or a meadow to walk through to the river? The wind's in the corn. You rub your hands for beeves hereafter ready for market. Or else you hear the rustle of skirts like the girls when dancing at Little Grove. To Cooney Potter, a pillar of dust or whirling leaves meant ruinous drought. They looked to me like Redhead Sammy stepping it off to Tour Lure. How could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more, with a medley of horns, bassoons, and piccolos stirred in my brain by crows and robins and the creak of a windmill? Only these? And I never started to plow in my life that someone did not stop in the road and take me away to a dance or a picnic. I ended up with 40 acres. I ended up with a broken fiddle and a broken laugh and 1,000 memories, and not a single regret.
Mabel Osborne. Your red blossoms amid green leaves are drooping, beautiful geranium. But you do not ask for water. You cannot speak. You do not need to speak. Everyone knows that you are dying of thirst, yet they do not bring you water. They pass on, saying, the geranium wants water. And I, who had happiness to share and longed to share your happiness, I who loved you, Spoon River, and craved your love, withered before your eyes, Spoon River, thirsting, thirsting, voiceless from chasteness of soul to ask you for love, you who knew and saw me perish before you, like this geranium which someone has planted over me and left to die.
The unknown. Ye aspiring ones, listen to the story of the unknown, who lies here with no stone to mark the place. As a boy, reckless and wanton, wandering with gun in hand, through the forest near the mansion of Aaron Hatfield, I shot a hawk perched on the top of a dead tree. He fell with a guttural cry at my feet, his wing broken. Then I put him in a cage where he lived many days, cawing angrily at me when I offered him food. Daily I searched the realms of Hades for the soul of the hawk, that I may offer him the friendship of one whom life wounded and caged.
Amelia Garrick. Yes, here I lie close to a stunted rose bush, in a forgotten place near the fence, where the thickets from Seaver's woods have crept over, growing sparsely. And you are a leader in New York, the wife of a noted millionaire, a name in the society columns, beautiful, admired, magnified perhaps by the mirage of distance. You have succeeded. I have failed in the eyes of the world. You are alive. I am dead. Yet I know that I vanquished your spirit, and I know that lying here far from you, unheard of among your great friends in the brilliant world where you move, I am really the unconquerable power over your life that robs it of complete triumph.
Herr Drummer. Do the boys and girls still go to Seaver's for cider after school in late September, or gather hazelnuts among the thickets on Aaron Hatfield's farm when the frosts begin? For many times with the laughing girls and boys played I along the road and over the hills when the sun was low and the air was cool, stopping to club the walnut tree standing leafless against a flaming west. Now, the smell of the autumn smoke and the dropping acorns and the echoes about the vales bring dreams of life. They hover over me. They question me. Where are those laughing comrades? How many are with me? How many in the old orchards along the way to Seaver's and in the woods that overlook the quiet water?
Dorcas Gustine. I was not beloved of the villagers, but all because I spoke my mind and met those who transgressed against me with plain remonstrance, hiding nor nurturing, nor secret griefs nor grudges. The act of the Spartan boy is greatly praised, who hid the wolf under his cloak, letting it devour him uncomplainingly. It is braver, I think, to snatch the wolf forth and fight him openly, even in the street, amid dust and howls of pain. The tongue may be an unruly member, but silence poisons the soul. Berate me who will, I am content.
Judge Somers, how does it happen, tell me, that I, who was most erudite of lawyers, who knew Blackstone and Coke almost by heart, who made the greatest speech the courthouse ever heard, and wrote a brief that won the praise of Justice Breese, how does it happen, tell me, that I lie here unmarked, forgotten, while Chase Henry, the town drunkard, has a marble block topped by an urn wherein nature, in a mood ironical, has sown a flowering weed?
Ana Clute. Over and over they used to ask me while buying the wine or the beer, in Peoria first, and later in Chicago, Denver, Frisco, New York, or wherever I lived, how I happened to lead the life and what was the start of it. Well, I told them a silk dress and a promise of marriage from a rich man. It was Lucius Atherton. But that was not really it at all. Suppose a boy steals an apple from a tray at the grocery store, and they all begin to call him a thief. The editor, minister, judge, and all the people. A thief, a thief, a thief, wherever he goes. And he can't get work, and he can't get bread without stealing it. Why, the boy will steal. It's the way people regard the theft of the apple that makes the boy what he is.
Tom Merritt. At first, I suspected something. She acted so calm and absent-minded. And one day, I heard the back door shut as I entered the front, and I saw him slink back of the smokehouse into the lot and run across the field. And I meant to kill him on sight. But that day, walking near Fourth Bridge, without a stick or a stone at hand, all of a sudden I saw him standing, scared to death, holding his rabbits. And all I could say was, "Don't, don't, don't!" as he aimed and fired at my heart.
Mrs. Merritt, silent before the jury, returning no word to the judge when he asked me if I had aught to say against the sentence, only shaking my head. What could I say to people who thought that a woman of 35 was at fault when her lover of 19 killed her husband, even though she had said to him over and over, "Go away, Elma, go far away. I have maddened your brain with the gift of my body. You will do some terrible thing." And just as I feared, he killed my husband, with which I had nothing to do before God. Silent for 30 years in prison, and the iron gates of Joliet swung as the gray and silent trustees carried me out in a coffin.
Elmer Carr. What but the love of God could have softened and made forgiving the people of Spoon River toward me, who wronged the bed of Thomas Merritt and murdered him beside? Oh, loving hearts that took me in again when I returned from 14 years in prison. Oh, helping hands that in the church received me and heard with tears my penitent confession, who took the sacrament of bread and wine. Repent, ye living ones, and rest with Jesus.
Sarah Brown. Maurice, Weep not. I'm not here under this pine tree. The balmy air of spring whispers through the sweet grass, the stars sparkle, the whippoorwill calls. But thou grievest, while my soul lies rapturous in the blessed nirvana of eternal light. Go to the good heart that is my husband, who broods upon what he calls our guilty love. Tell him that my love for you, no less than my love for him, wrought out my destiny, that through the flesh I won spirit, and through spirit, peace. There is no marriage in heaven, but there is love.
A.D. Blood. If you in the village think that my work was a good one, who closed the saloons and stopped all playing at cards and hauled old Daisy Fraser before Justice Arnett in many a crusade to purge the people of sin, why do you let the milliner's daughter Dora and the worthless son of Benjamin Pantier nightly make my grave their unholy pillow?
Ada Fricky, nothing in life is alien to you. I was a penniless girl from Summon who stepped from the morning train in Spoon River. All the houses stood before me with closed doors and drawn shades. I was barred out. I had no place or part in any of them. And I walked past the old McNeely mansion, a castle of stone mid walks and gardens, with workmen about the place on guard, and the county and state upholding it for its lordly owner, full of pride. I was so hungry I had a vision. I saw a giant pair of scissors dip from the sky like the beam of a dredge and cut the house in two like a curtain. But at the commercial, I saw a man who winked at me as I asked for work. It was Wash McNeely's son. He proved the link in the chain of title to half my ownership of the mansion through a breach of promise suit, the scissors. So you see, the house from the day I was born was only waiting for me.
Samuel Gardner. I, who kept the greenhouse, lover of trees and flowers, oft in life saw this umbrageous elm, measuring its generous branches with my eye, and listened to its rejoicing leaves lovingly patting each other with sweet aeolian whispers. And well they might, for the roots had grown so wide and deep that the soil of the hill could not withhold aught of its virtue, enriched by rain and warmed by the sun, but yielded it all to the thrifty roots, through which it was drawn and whirled to the trunk, and thence to the branches and into the leaves, whence from the breeze took life and sang. Now I, an under-tenant of the earth, can see that the branches of a tree spread no wider than its roots. How shall the soul of a man be larger than the life he lived?
Dow Crit. Samuel is forever talking about his elm, but I did not need to die to learn about roots. I, who dug all the ditches about Spoon River. Look at my elm, sprung from as good a seed as his, sown at the same time. It is dying at the top, not from lack of life, nor fungus, nor destroying insect as the sexton thinks. Look, Samuel, where the roots have struck rock and can spread no further, and all the while the top of the tree is tiring itself out and dying, trying to grow.
Sarepta Mason. My life's blossoms might have bloomed on all sides, save for a bitter wind which stunted my petals on the side of me which you in the village could see. From the dust I lift my voice in protest. My flowering side you never saw. Ye living ones, ye are fools indeed, who do not know the ways of the wind and the unseen forces that govern the processes of life.
Lucius Atherton. When my mustache curled and my hair was black, and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent knave of hearts, and took many a trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me, not fearing me, and I had no more exciting adventures wherein I was all but shot for a heartless devil, but only drabby affairs, warmed over affairs, of other days and other men. And time went on until I lived at Mayer's restaurant, partaking of short orders, a gray, untidy, toothless, discarded, rural Don Juan. There is a mighty shade here who sings of one named Beatrice, and I see now that the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life.
Anne Rutledge. Out of me, unworthy and unknown, the vibrations of deathless music, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Out of me, the forgiveness of millions toward millions, and the beneficent face of a nation shining with justice and truth. I'm Anne Rutledge who sleep beneath these weeds, beloved in life of Abraham Lincoln, wedded to him, not through union, but through separation. Bloom forever, O Republic, from the dust of my bosom.
Circe Foote. I wanted to go away to college, but rich Aunt Persis wouldn't help me. So I made gardens, and I raked the lawns, and I bought John Alden's books with my earnings, and toiled for the very means of life. I wanted to marry Delia Prickett. But how could I do it with what I earned? And there was Aunt Persis, more than 70, who sat in a wheelchair half alive with her throat so paralyzed when she swallowed the soup ran out of her mouth like a duck. A gourmand yet, investing her income in mortgages, fretting all the time about her notes and rents and papers. That day, I was sawing wood for her and reading Proudhon in between. I went in the house for a drink of water, and there she sat, asleep in her chair, and Proudhon lying on the table, and a bottle of chloroform on the book she used sometimes for an aching tooth. I poured the chloroform on a handkerchief and held it to her nose till she died. Oh, Delia, you and Proudhon steadied my hand, and the coroner said she died of heart failure. I married Delia and got the money. A joke on you, Spoon River?
Zenas Witt. I was 16 and I had the most terrible dreams and specks before my eyes and nervous weakness, and I couldn't remember the books I read, like Frank Drummer, who memorized page after page, and my back was weak and I worried, and I was embarrassed and stammered my lessons. And when I stood up to recite, I'd forget everything that I had studied. Well, I saw Dr. Weiss's advertisement, and there I read everything in print, just as if he had known me, and about the dreams which I couldn't help. So I knew I was marked for an early grave. And I worried, until I had a cough. And then the dreams stopped. And then I slept the sleep without dreams, here on the hill by the river.
Pettit the poet. seeds in a dry pod. Tick, 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 like mites in a quarrel. Faint iambics that the full breeze wakens, but the pine tree makes a symphony thereof. Triolets, villanelles, rondelles, rondos, ballades by the score with the same old thought. The snows and the roses of yesterday are vanished. And what is love but a rose that fades? Life all around me here in the village. Tragedy, comedy, valor and truth, courage, constancy, heroism, failure, all in the loom. And oh, what patterns! Woodlands, meadows, streams, and rivers, blind to all of it my whole life long. Triolets, villanelles, rondelles, rondos, seeds in a dry pod. Tick, tick, tick. Tick, tick, tick. What little iambics, while Homer and Whitman roared in the pines.
Dora Williams. When Reuben Pantier ran away and threw me, I went to Springfield. There I met a lush whose father, just deceased, left him a fortune. He married me when drunk. My life was wretched. A year passed, and one day they found him dead. That made me rich. I moved on to Chicago. After a time, met Tyler Roundtree. Villain. I moved on to New York. A gray-haired magnate went mad about me, so another fortune. He died one night right in my arms, you know. I saw his purple face for years thereafter. There was almost a scandal. I moved on, this time to Paris. I was now a woman, insidious, subtle, versed in the world, and rich. My sweet apartment near the Champs-Élysées became a center for all sorts of people. Musicians, poets, dandies, artists, nobles, where we spoke French and German, Italian, English. I wed Count Navigato, native of Genoa. We went to Rome. He poisoned me, I think. Now in the Campo Santo overlooking the sea where young Columbus dreamed new worlds. See what they chiseled? Contessa Navigato, implora eterna quiete.
Mrs. Williams. I was the milliner. Talked about, lied about. Mother of Dora, whose strange disappearance was charged to her rearing. My eye, quick to beauty, saw much beside ribbons and buckles and feathers and leghorns and felts to set off sweet faces and dark hair and gold. One thing I will tell you, and one I will ask. The stealers of husbands wear powder and trinkets and fashionable hats. Wives, wear them yourselves. Hats may make divorces. They also prevent them. Well, now, let me ask you, if all the children born here in Spoon River had been reared by the county somewhere on a farm, and the fathers and mothers had been given their freedom to live and enjoy, change mates if they wished, do you think that Spoon River had been any the worse?
Albert Scherding. Jonas King thought his lot a hard one because his children were all failures. But I know of a fate more trying than that. It is to be a failure while your children are successes. For I raised a brood of eagles who flew away at last, leaving me, a crow, on the abandoned bough. Then, with the ambition to prefix honorable to my name, and thus to win my children's admiration, I ran for county superintendent of schools, spending my accumulations to win, and lost. That fall, my daughter received first prize in Paris for her picture entitled The Old Mill. It was of the water mill before Henry Wilkin put in steam. The feeling that I was not worthy of her finished me.
Julia Miller. We quarreled that morning, for he was 65 and I was 30, and I was nervous and heavy with the child whose birth I dreaded. I thought over that last letter written to me by that estranged young soul whose betrayal of me I had concealed by marrying the old man. Then I took morphine and sat down to read. Across the blackness that came over my eyes, I see the flickering light of these words even now. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise.
Chase Henry. In life I was the town drunkard. When I died, the priest denied me burial in holy ground, the which redounded to my good fortune, for the Protestants bought this lot and buried my body here, close to the grave of the banker Nicholas, and of his wife Priscilla. Take note, ye prudent and pious souls, of the cross currents in life which bring honor to the dead who lived in shame.
Pauline Barrett. Almost the shell of a woman after the surgeon's knife, and almost a year to creep back into strength, till the dawn of our wedding decennial found me my seaman self again. We walked the forest together by a path of soundless moss and turf. But I could not look in your eyes, and you could not look in my eyes, for such sorrow was ours. The beginning of gray in your hair, and I but a shell of myself. And what did we talk of? Sky and water, anything most to hide our thoughts. And then your gift of wild roses set on the table to grace our dinner. Poor heart, how bravely you struggled to imagine and live a remembered rapture. Then my spirit drooped as the night came on, and you left me alone in my room for a while, as you did when I was a bride, poor heart. And I looked in the mirror, and something said, one should be all dead when one is half dead, nor ever mock life, nor ever cheat love. And I did it, looking there in the mirror. Dear, have you ever understood?
Ezra Bartlett, a chaplain in the army, a chaplain in the prisons, an exhorter of Spoon River, drunk with divinity, Spoon River, yet bringing poor Eliza Johnson to shame, and myself to scorn and wretchedness. But why will you never see that love of women, and even love of wine, are stimulants by which the soul, hungering for divinity, reaches the ecstatic vision and sees the celestial outposts? Only after many trials for strength, only when all stimulants fail, does the aspiring soul, by its own sheer power, find the divine by resting upon itself.
Nellie Clark. I was only 8 years old, and before I grew up and knew what it meant, I had no words for it, except that I was frightened and told my mother, and that my father got a pistol and would have killed Charlie, who was a big boy, 15 years old, except for his mother. Nevertheless, the story clung to me. But the man who married me, a widower of 35, was a newcomer and never heard it, till 2 years after we were married. Then he considered himself cheated, and the village agreed that I was not really a virgin. Well, he deserted me, and I died the following winter.
Harold Arnett. I leaned against the mantel, sick, thinking of my failure, looking into the abysm, weak from the noonday heat. A church bell sounded mournfully far away. I heard the cry of a baby and the coughing of John Yarnell, bedridden, feverish, dying. Then the violent voice of my wife. "Watch out, the potatoes are burning." I smelled them. Then there was irresistible disgust. I pulled the trigger. Blackness. Light. Unspeakable regret. Fumbling for the world again. Too late. Thus I came here with lungs for breathing. One cannot breathe here with lungs, though one must breathe. Of what use is it to rid oneself of the world when no soul may ever escape the eternal destiny of life?
Roscoe Percopile. She loved me. Oh, how she loved me. I never had a chance to escape from the day she first saw me. But then, after we were married, I thought she might prove her mortality and let me out. Or she might divorce me. But few die, none resign. Then I ran away and was gone a year on a lark, but she never complained. She said all would be well, that I would return. And I did return. I told her that while taking a row in a boat, I'd been captured near Van Buren Street by pirates on Lake Michigan and kept in chains so I could not ride her. She cried and kissed me and said it was cruel, outrageous, inhuman. I then concluded our marriage was a divine dispensation and could not be dissolved except by death. I was right.
Mrs. Percopile. He ran away and was gone for a year. When he came home, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan and kept in chains so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew very well what he was doing, and that he met the milliner, Mrs. Williams, now and then, when she went to the city to buy goods, as she said. But a promise is a promise, and marriage is marriage, and out of respect for my own character, I refused to be drawn into a divorce by the scheme of a husband who had merely grown tired of his marital vow and duty.
Nicholas Bindle. Were you not ashamed, fellow citizens, when my estate was probated and everyone knew how small a fortune I left? You who hounded me in life to give to the churches, to the poor, to the village, me who had already given much. And think you not I did not know that the pipe organ, which I gave to the church, played its christening songs when Deacon Rhodes, who broke and all but ruined me, worshipped for the first time after his acquittal?
Ye bow. They got me into Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I could have been no worse off if I had tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, as if it were a prank, and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Peking, and no children shall worship at my grave.
John Ballard. In the lust of my strength I cursed God, but he paid no attention to me. I might as well have cursed the stars. In my last sickness I was in agony, but I was resolute, and I cursed God for my suffering. Still he paid no attention to me. He left me alone, as he had always done. I might as well have cursed the Presbyterian steeple. Then, as I grew weaker, a terror came over me. Perhaps I had alienated God by cursing him. One day, Lydia Humphrey brought me a bouquet, and it occurred to me to try to make friends with God. So I tried to make friends with him. But I might as well have tried to make friends with the bouquet. Now I was very close to the secret, for I really could make friends with the bouquet by holding close to me the love in me for the bouquet. And so I was creeping upon the secret, but...
Hortense Robbins. My name used to be in the papers daily as having dined somewhere or traveled somewhere or rented a house in Paris where I entertained the nobility. I was forever eating or traveling or taking the cure in Baden-Baden. Now I am here to do honor to Spoon River, here beside the family whence I sprang. No one cares now where I dined or lived, or whom I entertained, or how often I took the cure at Baden-Baden.
We now pause for station identification. You are listening to KLLG-LP 97.9 Willits, California. We now return to selections from the Spoon River Anthology.
Josiah Tompkins. I was well known and much beloved and rich, as fortunes are reckoned in Spoon River, where I had lived and worked. That was the home for me, though all my children had flown afar, which is the way of nature, all but one, the boy, who was the baby, stayed at home, to be my help in my failing years and the solace of his mother. But I grew weaker as he grew stronger, and he quarreled with me about the business, and his wife said I was a hindrance to it. And he won his mother to see as he did, till they tore me up to be transplanted with them to her girlhood home in Missouri. And so much of my fortune was gone at last, though I made the will just as he drew it. He profited little by it.
Griffey the Cooper. The Coopers should know about tubs, but I learned about life as well. And you who loiter around these graves think you know life. You think your eye sweeps about a wide horizon, perhaps. In truth, you are only looking around the interior of your tub. You cannot lift yourself to its rims and see the outer world of things, and at the same time see yourself. You are submerged in the tub of yourself. Taboos and rules and appearances are the staves of your tub. Break them and dispel the witchcraft of thinking your tub is life, and that you know life.
Hamilton Green. I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Thomas Green of Kentucky, of valiant and honorable blood both. To them I owe all that I became, judge, member of Congress, leader in the state. From my mother I inherited vivacity, fancy, language. From my father, will, judgment, logic. All honor to them for what service I was to the people.
Elsa Wertmann. I was a peasant girl born in Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy and strong. And the first place I worked was at Thomas Green's. On a summer's day, when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and took me right in his arms and kissed me on my throat, I turning my head. Then neither of us seemed to know what happened, and I cried for what would become of me, and cried as my secret began to show. One day Mrs. Green said she understood and would make no trouble for me, and being childless, would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still. So she hid in the house and sent out rumors as if it were going to happen to her. And all went well. And a child was born. They were so kind to me. Later I married Gus Wertmann, and years passed. But at political rallies, when sitters-by thought I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green, that was not it. No, I wanted to say, that's my son. That's my son.
Richard Bone. When I first came to Spoon River, I did not know whether what they told me was true or false. They would bring me the epitaph and stand around the shop while I worked, and they'd say, "He was so kind. He was wonderful. She was the sweetest woman. He was a consistent Christian." And I chiseled for them whatever they wished, all in ignorance of its truth. But later, as I lived among the people here, I knew how near to the life were the epitaphs that were ordered for them as they died. But still I chiseled whatever they paid me to chisel, and made myself party to the false chronicles of the stones, even as the historian does who writes without knowing the truth, or because he is influenced to hide it.
The Village Atheist. Ye young debaters over the doctrine of the soul's immortality, I who lie here was the village atheist, talkative, contentious, versed in the arguments of the infidels. But through a long sickness, coughing myself to death, I read the Upanishads and the poetry of Jesus, and they lighted a torch of hope and intuition and desire, which the shadow leading me swiftly through the caverns of darkness could not extinguish. Listen to me, ye who live in the senses and think through the senses only. Immortality is not a gift. Immortality is an achievement, and only those who strive mightily shall possess it.
Father Malloy. You are over there, Father Malloy, where the holy ground is, and the cross marks every grave, not here with us on the hill, us of wavering faith and clouded vision, and drifting hope and unforgiven sins. You were so human, Father Malloy, taking a friendly glass sometimes with us, siding with us who would rescue Spoon River from the coldness and the dreariness of village morality. You were like a traveler who brings a little box of sand from the wastes about the pyramids and makes them real, and Egypt real. You were a part of and related to a great past. And yet you were so close to many of us. You believed in the joy of life. You did not seem to be ashamed of the flesh. You faced life as it is and as it changes. Some of us almost came to you, Father Malloy, seeing how your church had divined the heart and provided for it through Peter the Flame, Peter the Rock.
Mrs. George Reese. To this generation, I would say, memorize some bit of verse, of truth or beauty. It may serve a turn in your life. My husband had nothing to do with the fall of the bank. He was only cashier. The wreck was due to the president, Thomas Rhodes, and his vain, unscrupulous son. Yet my husband was sent to prison, and I was left with the children to feed and clothe and school them. And I did it, and sent them forth into the world all clean and strong, and all through the wisdom of Pope, the poet. Act well your part. There all the honor lies.
Reverend Abner Pete, I had no objection at all to selling my household effects at auction on the village square. It gave my beloved flock the chance to get something which belonged to me for a memorial. But that trunk, which was struck off to Burchard, the grog keeper, oh, did you know it contained the manuscripts of a lifetime of sermons? And he burned them as waste paper.
Tom Beatty. I was a lawyer like Harmon Whitney, or Kinsey Keene, or Garrison Standard, for I tried the rights of property, although by lamplight, for 30 years in that poker room in the Opera House. And I say to you that life's a gambler head and shoulders above us all. No mayor alive can close the house. If you lose, you can squeal as you will. You'll not get back your money. He makes the percentage hard to conquer. He stacks the cards to catch your weakness and not to meet your strength. And he gives you 70 years to play. For if you cannot win at 70, you cannot win at all. So if you lose, get out of the room. Get out of the room when your time is up. It's mean to sit and fumble the cards and curse your losses leaden-eyed, whining to try and try.
Mrs. Kessler. Mr. Kessler, you know, was in the Army, and he drew $6 a month as a pension and stood on the corner talking politics or sat at home reading Grant's memoirs. And I supported the family by washing, learning the secrets of all the people from their curtains, counterpanes, shirts and skirts. For things that are new grow old at length. They're replaced with better or none at all. People are prospering or falling back, and rents and patches widen with time. No thread or needle can pace decay, and there are stains that baffle soap, and there are colors that run in spite of you, blamed though you are for spoiling a dress. Handkerchiefs, napery have their secrets. The laundress, life, knows all about it. And I, who went to all the funerals held in Spoon River, swear I never saw a dead face without thinking it looked like something washed and ironed.
Elizabeth Childers. Dust of my dust, and dust with my dust. O child who died as you entered the world, dead with my death, not knowing breath, though you tried so hard. with a heart that beat when you lived with me and stopped when you left me for life. It is well, my child, for you never traveled the long, long way that begins with school days, when little fingers blur under the tears that fall on crooked letters, and the earliest wound, when a little mate leaves you alone for another, and sickness, and the face of fear by the bed, the death of a father or mother, or shame for them, or poverty. The maiden sorrow of school days ended, and the eyeless nature that makes you drink from the cup of love, though you know it's poisoned. To whom would your flower face have been lifted? Botanist? Weakling? A cry of what blood to yours? Pure or foul, it makes no matter. It is blood that calls to our blood. And then your children, oh, what might they be? Oh, and what your sorrow, child, child. Death is better than life.
Davis Matlock. Suppose it is nothing but the hive, that there are drones and workers and queens, and nothing but storing honey, material things as well as culture and wisdom, for the next generation, this generation never living, except as it swarms in the sunlight of youth, strengthening its wings on what has been gathered, and tasting on the way to the hive from the clover field the delicate spoil. Suppose all this, and suppose the truth, that the nature of man is greater than nature's need in the hive. You must bear the burden of life, as well as the urge from your spirit's excess. Well, I say to live it out like a god, sure of immortal life, though you are in doubt, is the way to live it. If that doesn't make God proud of you, then God is nothing but gravitation, or sleep is the golden goal.
Lucinda Matlock. I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played snap-out at Winchester. One time we changed partners driving home in the moonlight of middle June, and then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost, ere I reached the age of 60. I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick, I made the garden, and for holiday rambled over the fields where sank the larks, and by Spoon River gathering many a shell, and many a flower and medicinal weed. Shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough, that is all, and I passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger, discontent, and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
Thank you for joining us this evening for a journey beyond the grave. We hope you enjoyed these selections from the Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters. The original anthology contained 209 free verse poems named for people in the fictional town of Spoon River, Illinois. Masters actually based most of the stories on real people he knew or had heard about when living in Lewiston and Petersburg, Illinois as a young man. Some he disguised well, others not at all. First published as a series in Reedy's magazine in 1914, these poems created quite a sensation. Neighbors gossiped about who was who, and many accused Masters of violating the laws of common decency with some of the topics he covered in the poems, topics not discussed in polite society. It's no small wonder that the residents resented his portrayal of their towns. In fact, the town of Lewiston, Illinois banned the book from its schools and libraries, and Masters' own mother voted in favor of the ban. It wasn't until 1974, 60 years later, that the ban was lifted. Today, however, Lewiston takes pride in its connection to Spoon River Anthology and Edgar Lee Masters. At Oak Hill Cemetery, there are markers at some of the graves identifying which character in the anthology represented the person buried there. In 2015, they even held a centennial celebration. Your ghostly guides this evening in order of appearance are Miranda Swearengen, Henry Shevitz, Kathy Vellis, Kevin H.C. Moore, Erlene Gleisner, Aris Vellis, Mary Burns, Jeff Shipp, Mike Adair, Phaedra Swearengin, Jennifer Julian, Garrett Moore, Bruce Anditch, and Liz Dellett. We want to express our gratitude to KLLG for giving us a place to play and allowing us to entertain you. Special thanks also go to our producer Mike Adair and our audio engineer Kevin H.C. Moore. We can't forget the underwriter of the Willits Community Theater season, NC Financial Group. If you enjoyed tonight's program, please visit the theater's website where you will find out how you can see and hear other WCT productions. You will also find the opportunity to become a WCT season ticket holder. For only $7 a month, you get unlimited access to all audio and video content found on the website. For just a few pennies more per month, you can grab yourself some cool WCT gear. Go to www.wctperformingartscenter.org and look for the link to Patreon in the upper middle of the page. That link again is www.wctperformingartscenter.org. And this concludes our program. This has been a Willits Community Theater production. Thank you for joining us here on KLLG. On behalf of the cast and crew for Spoon River Anthology, I'm Phaedra Swearengin. Good night.
From the village, hidden deep in the valley, one rainy morning, dark and gray, his soul winged its way to heaven. Jimmy Brown had passed away. Silent people gathered at the chapel to say farewell to their old friend, whose life had been like a flower, burning, blooming, till the end. Boom, 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 boom. Just a lonely bell was ringing in the little valley town. The farewell that it was singing was to old Jimmy Brown. Then a little congregation prayed for guidance from above. Lead us not into temptation, may his soul find the salvation of thy great eternal